And sometimes there's low testosterone levels too, especially I've heard that from a lot of people that testosterone levels are really low, especially with men with low arousal, low testosterone. Also, I mean, you know, like depression, of course, depression makes you low libido, and so does alcohol. This is what's so funny, right? Okay, so go drink alcohol, and then go have pleasure sex, right? And then what is the outcome of that? Uglier, depressed, right? With low arousal. But that's what's on the beer commercial, right? It's a crack up. It's like the actual consequences of this are horrible for your sexuality. Oh, it's so funny. I see those commercials. I'm like, oh Lord. All right. So, is it biological? That's the first thing. Is it medication? I have a lot of clients. There's a lot of side effects to the SSRIs and SNRIs, classification of drugs for depression and anxiety. Some of them high sexual side effects, some of them lower sexual side effects. There's actually a chart you can pull up online that will show the side effects to certain antidepressants, and you can see if they have high sexual side effects. Did the symptoms start around the same time that the commencement of the new medication? That would be a good question. You want to give a list of all the medication that the client takes. Blood pressure medication can lower antipsychotics, antidepressants can lower sexual arousal. There's actually some antidepressants that will increase sexual arousal. Not being depressed increases sexual arousal, right? So, I think I put the psychotropic medication handout in iTunes U, so you can pull that up and look at that. It's a great overview. In fact, I'd love to teach a class on just psychotropic medication and clinical work. Okay, is it psychological? So are they depressed, anxious, or have another mental health diagnosis that would inhibit sexuality? Depression leads to low sexual arousal, right? Anxiety. Anytime the attachment system is activated, it does not activate the sexual system, so there's low sexual arousal. And so anxiety and depression do not lead to sex unless you're soothing yourself from the motion of anxiety. So you have sex to soothe yourself, to shift out of anxiety to dopamine and excitement. That's where I've seen the exception. What about the history of attachment styles, influence on sex? Right. What do you think? How do you think avoidance approach sex? I think we talked about this in class, didn't we? They approach sex for pleasure. It's not so much about connection. What about anxious?
Buy it.
Huh?
Used to buy connection.
To buy connection. Yeah. Yeah. So they sometimes will prostitute themselves out in relationships to get connection. Yeah. How do you think? Well, those are really the two main ones, right? Just the two types of avoidant would approach it differently. Any sign of sexual trauma or sexual compulsive behaviors? You want to ask about that. Any history of sexual trauma or sexual compulsivity usually means that any sexual compulsivity usually means there's some history of overexposure to sexuality at a young age. And our sexual abuse can have a major influence on the way someone acts sexually and on, particularly when it comes to sexual avoidance. Because all touch is bad touch. And there's an association between the abuse, even just a central nervous system response to anything sexual will trigger an autonomic shutting down. Like the girl I told you about that I kissed, remember? Yeah. Right? An automatic response to any sexual stimulation. So you think she has trouble in her sex life? Yeah, you would if you played dead every time. So it's a relationship to her own autonomic central nervous system response. And so you want to discover if there's a history of sexual abuse. That's really tricky to work through, you guys. It is, man. Sexual abuse survivors and sex in marriage is super tricky. And you have to have a very, very patient partner who is allowed to understand how their abuse is impacting them at a level that is beyond what they can control. And so the work is about getting them to a place that have a higher degree of freedom around their responses sexually, because the associations are so strong, because it's really wired for survival. Right? And survival wiring is just getting in the way all the time of a healthy sexual experience. It doesn't matter if the partner's healthy, they don't perceive them as being healthy, right? At a level that's beyond the consciousness. And so they react as if they're still the perpetrator. Right? Yeah. Okay. All right. Is it relational? Is there active conflict? Is there communication? Describe intimacy, non-sexual. Is there non-sexual touch? Is there non-sexual conversations? Non-sexual touch is one of the greatest assessments of sexual problems. How much non-sexual touch do you guys have? I mean, most people that struggle sexually have a lot of non-sexual touch problems. Do you ever hold hands? Do you put your arms around each other? Right? Do you ever rub their shoulders and hair? I mean, non-sexual touch is a lost art. Non-sexual touch is awesome. Right? I mean, there should be normal rhythms in relationships to have non-sexual touch. I mean, normal rhythms. Like ones you can count on, like when you get in the car, you hold hands. Establishing those rhythms of non-sexual touch that are important. The comings and goings we talked about. The hugging, the comings and goings, the sitting close, not sitting apart. You know, sitting on the same sofa. Desiring connection more than comfort. Right? Just because my lazy boy is more comfortable doesn't mean that I need to be over my lazy boy all the time. It doesn't mean that there's sometimes, right? And so connection, the non-sexual touch is really important. And kids who didn't grow up in a home where there's a lot of non-sexual touch, they don't know how to do non-sexual touch. And they're kind of afraid of all the touch. Is there time spent together non-sexually? Or is most of their contact sexual? Right? I mean, for a successful sexual experience, there needs to be some preparation. That's part of the resolution process. And so to show up at 10 o'clock at night from work and walk into the bedroom and want to have sex with your partner when you haven't seen them all day, it's not oxytocin producing, right? There's no warm up for that. And it's in these other types of time spent together non-sexually that prime the system within that sexual experience. Is it experiences or culture? Anything that affects the feelings in your body may impact feelings related to sex. So these include like background, culture, religion, family attitudes to sex. I've heard this from overly conservative families. They'll be like, don't have sex to get married, don't have sex to get married, don't have sex to get married. And then you're like, no, sex is bad, sex is bad. And they get married. How are you supposed to shut it down and turn it on? Right? Like every message in your head is sex is bad. And they get married and you're there on your honeymoon night like, sex is bad. Right? That's all these messages in your head, but I'm supposed to be sexual. And then no conversations about sex, especially first sexual times. The pain associated with that, and the mess comes with that. Like seriously, on the honeymoon night, you know how many people are injured traumatically? I'm not talking physically injured. Well, maybe a little bit physically injured too. Emotionally injured because they feel like they're hurting each other. Like the bleeding and all this other stuff that goes on, and then the shaming and the hiding, and like it's traumatic unless you know what's coming, right? Unless you are prepared to understand that this is normal and this is okay and that this will change. I had a guy that I worked with. He thought he actually injured his wife sexually when he first had sex with her because she was bleeding. He felt horrible guilt and shame, and they're on his honeymoon, and he doesn't want to have sex with her anymore. He didn't know that this can actually happen the first time you have sex. It's like the sex education piece that families, it's so poor that, you know, I had a guy that this is so sad. His parents talked to him so little about, they didn't talk to him at all about sex. When he had his forced orgasm, he thought he hurt himself. He thought he had to go to the doctor. Because his ejaculation, he thought, was like he actually had hurt himself. And so he's like, I sat there for like a month thinking I hurt myself and waiting for myself to die. Because I couldn't tell anybody. I mean, it's horrible, right? And that has to do with family background too. Knowledge about and response to own bodily changes like menstruation, pregnancy, and menopause. Like I know females that I've talked to that have never been taught about menstruation. All of a sudden started bleeding one day and like, what the heck is going on? Parents didn't prepare them for menstruation, didn't know what it was. Same thing as my guy, right? Who thought he was dying when he had his first orgasm. Pregnancy, how to get pregnant. Oh my gosh, menopause. You gotta learn about menopause. My wife just had hysterectomy and she went right into menopause. With hysterectomy because, you know, all the ovaries. Holy cow. It's like lock and loaded, get ready, because here it comes. It's so, So, oh my gosh, she wouldn't mind me sharing this with you because she thinks it's funny. But she is sweating constantly out of nowhere. So she's in church, she's sitting there, she's like, oh my God, here it comes. And I got my Bolton, I'm like, fanning her, you know, we'll be in bed. And one minute she's like, I'm freezing. Next minute she's like, whoosh, covers off. I got 3 layers of covers on me. She'll say, is it hot in here? No, it's not hot in here. She's having her own personal summer over there. Oh God, it's so sad. I feel so bad, and you don't sleep as well. Like it's like sleep is like what if you ever thought you slept well, it's done when you go through menstruation, because you're like you're waking up, you're so hot, and I'll say, you know, I feel guilty now. I'm not in menstruation, and she'll be like, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm not in menstruation either. She'll say, how'd you sleep? And I'll be like, great. And I'll be like, how'd you sleep? Oh, I was up probably 8 times, sweating. It's like, and when you have a hysterectomy, it comes on like that. It's not like slow ramp up. It's like all of a sudden, after she had a hysterectomy, it was like she had a week where she must have had enough estrogen left in her body. She's like, this is not a problem. I'm not having any problems. And then all of a sudden, it kicked in. And when she had cancer too, so you can't take estrogen supplements. So you're just, you got nothing but hot flashes. Yeah. So, you know, you can lower hot, just info for you. You can lower hot flashes with antidepressants. Effexor and Celexa can lower the amount of hot, by 50%, the amount of hot flashes that you have. Those of you who are entering it or are going to enter it, late 40s, early 50s, right around there, get your Celexa in about 3 or 4 weeks before you start to feel it. It might help you through it. Not to mention what it might do for your moods. Right? The up and down moodiness. I would highly recommend it.
Are you recommending that to Melissa?
Yeah, right? Yeah, seriously. And,
Putting it in her morning smoothie.
yeah, if it's morning smoothie. You might want to. Well, her doctor was like, you got to get on something. Because this is going to come like a freight train. And you can't handle it. I mean, if this is cutting it 50%, you can't imagine what it would be if it wasn't. It would just be constant. So weird. Sexual beliefs. Oops, sorry. Sorry. Sexual beliefs. What is acceptable? Right. Right to refuse. Can you refuse? Can you not refuse? Traumatic experiences, including history of sexual or physical abuse or traumatic vaginal examinations. I had a client I worked with that had a really traumatic vaginal examination. She went to her family doctor, ended up being a family friend, who did her first vaginal examination, and she was horribly embarrassed, right, by that. And then she had to like go to dinner with her family after this vaginal examination. And so, I mean, there's like, I'm not there for, well, yes I am. I've been there for vaginal examinations. It's really interesting. I think it's always funny because the doctor's there and he's like making conversations.
Yeah.
Right? He's totally making conversations. He's like, how are your kids? I think OBs must get trained in their training program to have other conversations about what they're doing when they're not, right? Like, hey, also, did you know that you can go prior to marriage, you can go to your OB and they can stretch you out, so it's less painful in marriage to have sex.
Oh yeah, they can break your hymen too.
Yeah, they can break your hymen and they can stretch you out so that when you have sex, it's a much more pleasurable experience to do that. There's a lot, and there's people that don't know that, right? Yeah. I don't know.
Awesome sexual like things that go wrong with like trying to have sex too. So like they have like things for vaginismus and stuff like that. Yeah. So there's a lot of different things that they can do.
Yeah. Definitely go to your OB before they'll help you out. But I know that they can do that. It wasn't my sex talk by James Dobson. James Dobson didn't say anything about that. Right. Talk to your fiance about going to the OB and get stretched out. That wasn't in his repertoire of things, James Dobson. Okay,
You really need to make a video.
I do, right? Who's recording this? I hope nobody.